Okay, adding and subtracting mixed numbers. Pretty similar to when we did the fractions, but we're gonna add just one more step, just a little bit harder. So to add or subtract mixed numbers, we wanna add or subtract the fractions just like we were doing before. If the denominators, if the bottom numbers are different, we have to rename them using the lowest common denominator if necessary. Okay, so that's kind of like our step one. And then our step two is to add or subtract the whole numbers, and then always simplify if you possibly can. So example 1 determines 6 1/10 plus 2 3/10. So step 1, just look at your fractions and the operation in the middle. So since my fractions have the same denominator, I can just add those right across. 1 plus 3 is 4, and the denominator stays the same. Then I want to go back and add my whole numbers. So 6 plus 2 is 8. And simplify if necessary. 4/10 can be reduced. 2 will go into both of those. So 2 goes into 4 2 times, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. So my final answer is 8 2/5. For example 2, I've got 8 2/3 minus 6 1/2. So I'm going to focus on my fractions and the operation in the middle. So 2/3 minus 1/2. And if you need to, off to the side, your multiples of 2, your multiples of 3, and find that common denominator. So 6 is going to be my lowest common denominator. Then I can scale those fractions up, in this case by 3, and in 2/3 case by 2. So now I've got 4 6 minus 3 6. So 4 minus 3 is 1. Then I need to go back to my problem and work with my whole numbers. 8 minus 6 would be 2. Ooh, I forgot to do that. So 2 1/6 is my final answer. Now example 3 gets a little more complicated. I have 4 1/4 minus 2 3/5. So again, I'm going to focus just on the fractions right now, and I need a common denominator. So if you do your multiples of 4, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and then multiples of 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, got it. Okay, so common denominator is 20. And I got to change or rename those fractions. I can scale it by 5. So that turns 1/4 into 5/20 and 3/5 into 12/20. Okay, here's the thing. When we subtract, when we just had fractions, we could say 5 minus 12, and we would have to use our integer rules and go through that. When we have mixed numbers and we have these big whole numbers that we can borrow from, we want to do that first, so we don't have to deal with integer rules. So in this case, I can't take 12 away from 5 because I have this big whole number over here. I have the big brother. Okay? So big brother, the number 4, is going to let me borrow one of his whole numbers. Okay? So he's going to take 1 away, turn him into a 3. Okay? So now he's a 3. That 1 that I just took from him, we have to use him. We're not just getting rid of him. We want to use him. So anytime a fraction that can be reduced down to 1 you have always looks like a number on top of itself. And since we need it to match this fraction, I'm going to use 20 over 20. Okay? So that 20 over 20, the one I stole from 4, I'm going to combine with 5 over 20. Because this guy is going to get bigger, so he can subtract that 12. So 25 over 20 minus 12 over 20. So now I can subtract them without having to deal with integer rules. So the problem now becomes 3 25/20 minus 2 12/20. Okay, so I can subtract my fractions. 25 minus 12, and that gives me 13. Denominator stays the same. Go back and subtract my whole numbers. 3 minus 2 is 1. The exercises, number 1, 1 3/5 plus 4 1/5. My denominators match, so I'm going to add these guys first. 3 and 1 gives me 4/5. Then my whole numbers gives me 5. 5 and 4/5. Number 2, 2 and 5/6 minus 1 and 1/6. So focus on your fractions and your operations. So 5 minus 1 is 4. I get 4/6. I go back and subtract my whole numbers, which is 1. This can be reduced by 2. So I'm going to turn that into 2 goes into 4 2 times, 2 goes into 6 3 times, and I'm going to leave that 1. Number 3, so I've got 3 and 2/3 plus 2 and 1/2. Again, since we've already kind of looked at these, I know my denominator should be 6. And then I'll scale those up. So times 3 times 3. So 1/2 becomes 3/6. 2/3, I can scale it up by 2. And so 2/3 becomes 4/6. And so when I go to add my fractions together, 4 plus 3 is 7 over 6. And then that 3 plus 2 is 5. But this is improper. So I'm going to turn that into a mixed number before I go and add it back to that 5. So 7 divided by 6 is 1 and 1/6. So if this turns into 1 and 1/6, I'm going to combine it with that 5. So 5 plus 1 is 6 and 1/6. Number 4, 5 and 3/4 minus 3 and 1/6. So I got to use the lowest common denominator, which in this case is going to be 12. Again, if you need to do your multiples off to the side, please do it. So you know for sure you're using the lowest one and you're not hurting your brain using a huge number. Okay, so I'm going to scale 3/4 up. That'll give me 9. 1/6 up by 2. And then we go back and the operation was subtracting. So I'm going to take 9 minus 2. That'll give me 7. Denominator stays the same. Then look at those whole numbers. 5 minus 3. So 2 and 7/12. Number 5, 8 and 6/7/8. So I have to have something that can subtract that. So right now with just a whole number, I don't have that. But like we talked about earlier, I can always borrow. This whole number, he's got 8 whole numbers we can steal from. So I'm just going to borrow one from him. I'm going to take one away, make him 7. And then that other one I just stole, I need it to be a fraction so it can subtract this guy. So the one I just stole, I'm going to turn into a fraction equivalent to 1 that would match. In this case, it would be 8 over 8. So now my whole number 8, becomes 7 and 8/8 minus 7/8, minus 6 and 7/8. Okay, fractions first. That gives me 1/8. 7 minus 6 is 1. Last one, 1 and 4/5 plus, nope, hold on. 1 and 4/5 plus 3/10. Okay, so my common denominator, they'll both go into 10. So I don't even have to change that one. It's going to be the same. 4/5 can scale up by 2, so that's 8/10. So 1 and 8/10 plus 3/10. So adding my numerators gives me 11/10. But I've got this improper fraction that I can change into a mixed number. So 11 divided by 10 gives me 1 and 1/10. So add that back with your original whole number and you get 2 and 1/10.